If you are in housing, you have undoubtedly heard of Robert Shiller. I had the luxury of speaking with Mr. Lance Lambert, art writer for Fortune, who just did a piece on Robert Shiller. And I have a burning question that I want to ask him. But before we do that, let's get started. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Housing, housing, housing. Always a lot going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Robert Shiller is very well known in the industry. Obviously, the Case-Shiller Index, which came out this week, he made a housing call in 2008 or 9, which was he's credited with calling the last housing crash. But Lance, he put out a brain teaser for me that frankly hurts my brain. I want to share with you. So either A, you could help me unlock it, or I'll just tie your brain in knots. You ready?
Hit me.
So it is my impression that Robert Shiller currently believes that the 10-year appreciation in housing will come to an end because interest rates will stop rising. He believes that that is because the average mom and dad buyer are buying ahead, aka pull forward demand, because they expected rates to be higher later. As an economist, I have a degree in economics. I understand this thesis, but every mom and dad investor home buyer that I speak with doesn't think that way.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what you think.
So I listened to it a few times. I think what Schiller is saying is that not right now, but during the pandemic housing boom, people were buying and willing to bid up prices faster than normal because they were under the belief, which they were right, that mortgage rates would be much higher later on. And so that people were rushing to get the 2 and 3% mortgage rates. And that in my belief, actually, I do believe that the spring 2022 at the end, I think there was an acceleration of appreciation because people really started to see that rates were going to move up. They were seeing what the Fed were saying, and
Okay.
all the experts were saying, hey, rates are going to move up, rates are going to move up. And so there was more of an exuberance in the spring 2022 market.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I think that's his way of subtly saying that there's some frothiness in the market. Is some exuberance were there. Now, I agree, but the question is how much of this whole thing is exuberance? I agree that the spring 2022 is probably that, not the whole thing, but the spring 2022 is where, okay, there's a lot of frothiness to that. And it by the end of the year, half of it was knocked off. So we ended up 5.6% for 2022, and we're up 10.5% for the year initially.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So if that's what he was saying and I missed it, you're right. So first and foremost, spring 2022, clearly exuberance. I mean, when you have a county, King County, aka Seattle, averaging 112% of list price, that's exuberance. Also, let's not forget that was right around the time we had record low inventories. So it was kind of this powerful combination of increased demand, record low supply, bidding wars, EMD deposits release, just truly unhealthy behavior. I agree with that 100%. But where my brain really breaks with Robert Shiller's idea is interest rates stop rising, which, okay, they could be flat or fall, is going to cause kind of housing to stop going up. That's not how affordability works.
Well, let me go look at his comments to make sure we're in the same spot, because I think what he was saying, I don't. He's definitely hinting at he thinks the market is going to be moving sideways.
Okay,
that
which I agree with, frankly.
So he says the housing market is different than the stock market. It is normally forecastable. It has been growing since 2012. It has been about 10 years of steady growth in home prices, but it may be coming to an end with this interest rate rising cycle. So he's essentially saying that already what's happened is the force that is going to push us sideways. It kind of sounds like.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the fear of interest rate increases has been influencing people's thinking. It is not just the homeowners, it's the new buyers who wanted to get in there before interest rates went up. They wanted to lock in. So that's been a positive force on the market, but it's coming to an end. Yeah, I think he's talking about what already happened.
Okay. All right.
Moving from the low rates to the higher rates.
All right. If that's where he is, that makes me feel a lot better, because I was like, he's smarter than that. And I was reading it as today without the historical context. Okay, that's very
yeah.
helpful.
And then he's saying the prices this year, he says part of what's happening in the increase in home prices is just seasonal. It's the summer and it's typically going up in the summer. Yeah, which to me, that's his way of like winking and saying, we could see month over month declines return later this year as the market enters into the seasonally slow or second half of the year. That's kind of how I took it. And then he says, we'll see whether we get a soft landing of the economy, but it's a possibility. I'm not panicking one way or another.
Yeah. So basically, I think what he's saying is kind of what frankly, I've been hoping for well over a year, is we have a flat market for years to come. We let affordability slowly, begrudgingly grind out improvement with higher wages, real wages, slightly lower rates. And, affordability is better year after year, but it's no wild crash like everybody wants.
Yeah. Now, if this year we don't get declines in the second half of the year, let's say we're up 1% for the end of the year.
Okay.
Well, that means that we're going to be up like 5-6% for the year if we get a gain in the second half. Because you already know there's one, like we're going to top the all-time high from last June next month or the month after. That's inevitable.
It's baked in the cake.
There's at least another percent gain that's not in there. And so if you gained one in the seasonally second half of the year, slower second half of the year, you're up 5-6 for the year. Well, that's up on a nominal basis. That's up on a real basis. That's beating wages. There's no improvement to fundamentals. It would also beat rents for the year. So we would deteriorate in every category of the fundamentals for the year in a year when rates are up at 7, close to.
Wow.
And if that happens, we go into next year, inventory still tight. So if it's not sideways now, I think there is at some point we have to have a sideways.
No, it's just affordability. Affordability is terrible. It's just terrible.
Yeah. I mean, in theory, but then there's other people who, kind of like the Kevin Erdman, if I'm pronouncing his last name right, which, he sees the housing market is way more undersupplied than people think. He thinks we would need like 5 million more homes that were empty right now across the country just to get vacancy rates back to normal. So that's if we had 5 million homes, placed them wherever, and didn't let anybody live in them.
Yeah, just vacant. Wow.
Rates just back to normal is what he's saying. And so he says that should be the starting point of the math. So there are people like that do kind of scare me. Because if you look at what happened the last time housing fundamentals got to this place, it was 2005, 2006, right? And we famously crashed off of them. We had a mortgage bubble, subprime crisis, the economy went to shit. But at the same time, there was a handful of other countries that were in the same spot that didn't see a bust. They didn't see the subprime crisis. They didn't see what we saw. Those places are now up here. They're Canada.
Yeah, they ran away.
They didn't see the bust. And then the next cycle, they didn't see an improvement to fundamentals, and they just continue to deteriorate. So if there's not at some point a sideways market, that's where you're kind of that's kind of a scarier place to think about.
I agree. I'm hoping we get sideways.
If we didn't see, the thing that would have been nice about somewhat of more of a correction here is we'd at least known, okay, fundamentals have kind of improved.
Right.
And then if you don't even have a sideways market, you're potentially setting yourself up for a place where affordability is in a really scary place. And not only are the bottom third of the country not able to afford a home, but it's like the Californiaization of the rest of the country.
Yeah.
Which is a scary thing to think about. Because I mean, one of the reasons I think that your market is so hot at the bottom end is because out in California, your bottom end is like my upper half end out here, or the
Correct.
top third, right?
Yeah. Correct.
And so, the bottom end being on fire, like for the western half of the country, which is very much true. The more I report, it's not always as much the case out here. It can be somewhat more in the middle. But it's because your market is, and in the western half of the country, is so unaffordable. There's been an acute housing shortage for so long
Oh
that it's
yeah.
where the people who do break in, they're fairly affluent already. They're the
Yeah.
two household incomes that are in a great spot in their career, breaking into the housing market. And the worry is that we get to a housing market that is like that everywhere.
I would not wish that. I don't want to see Silicon Valley housing repeated everywhere. That's not healthy. That's not good for the United States,
And
frankly.
so the only way to get out of that is if we do have a period of a sideways market.
That's my hope. I've been calling it for somewhere between 25 and 27, sideways till then. I mean, it's nobody, Lance, you report a sideways market, nobody's going to read your articles. Everybody wants a crash or a bubble or something. So when I talk about sideways, people frown on me.
Yeah, sideways isn't sexy. Slowly increasing the number of homes across the country isn't sexy. Getting more multifamily units into, some places isn't the thing that gets the eyeballs. But it's the actual thing on the margins that move affordability. Because as we've seen this historic mortgage rate shock, and it hasn't done a ton to improve the actual dynamics in the market for the trajectory, at least so far. I mean,
Yeah.
what we've seen mortgage rates 3 to 7%, like we said, days on market
Yeah.
hasn't normalized.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I remember all these crash bros and whatnot telling me that if interest rates went up 1%, housing would fall 10%. Remember those great videos? Well, it's up 40% or
Yeah,
4%. So housing's supposed to be down 40. That's not how it works.
and all they have to do, and you have the spreadsheet for it, the 50
Yeah.
years, all they
Yeah.
have to do is look at the history of the housing market, and we saw 18% mortgage rates and prices didn't crash.
I know.
Um,
I keep telling people just look at the spreadsheet. It has the answer. It's not like
yeah,
I'm some genius. I just look back at history last time this happened. No price crash, people. Transaction crash. No price crash. Lance, how can people find you?
yeah, people can find me at News Lambert on Twitter, or Google Lance Lambert Fortune to find my articles.
You're amazing, man. Keep it up. Take care. Have a good week.
Thanks, Mike.